Morning glory, evening grace, brother, and it's great to have all of you back along with us here with a Temperance Awakening, and look forward to our third alcohol lecture here today, and this is going to be a shorter lecture, as what we have here is not extremely long, and the lecture that we have after this is relatively long, so we don't want to combine the two. But the one that we have here today shouldn't last that long. We're going to be looking at advertising and counter-advertising campaigns in the alcohol industry. And of course, advertising is an attempt to reach a target market by designing a series of messages and placing them in various media. And, we've seen and heard, many commercials, promoting alcohol. We've seen the good-looking, healthy young people on the television screen who seem to know how to enjoy life as they're depicted, drinking, beer or wine. And they never feel lonely or awkward. They're, always are surrounded by happy and supportive people. And how much do these ads influence you? They have to influence somebody. And experts, disagree on, on who they influence, especially do they influence young people? And yet whether or not the ads influence most people, we have to maintain our own independence, when it comes to abstaining from alcohol. We have to just be critically aware of the truth about alcohol. And so now that questions, are teenagers targeted? And of course this is very similar, like to tobacco. Like, at the present time of doing this alcohol lecture, we've already gone through many tobacco lectures, at least our first series of those. And for years, critics have accused the makers of, beer and other alcoholic beverages of deliberately promoting their products to the underage market. Once again, much like what tobacco did, which is, why tobacco, advertisements were all banned. And so are they right in that? And it's actually never been proven that the industry is trying to get kids to drink or to drink more than they already do. And, there's no clear-cut evidence that the ads actually do influence, drinking behavior. There's just not quite enough, scientific evidence, to prove that. At least according to the U.S. government, I should say. Everybody agrees, though, that the average teenager is exposed to several hundred alcohol commercials every year. There's no denying that. The industry-wide advertising budget to promote alcohol drinking was more than $1.2 billion in the late 1990s, per year from 1996 to 1999. It was more than $1.2 billion a year. According to the industry figures that were reported to the Federal Trade Commission. Beer companies alone spent more than $700 million a year on television and radio advertising in 2000, according to the Center for Science and the Public Interest, which is an advocacy group. The alcohol industry says that it does not broadcast ads for beer and wine during programs where more than half the viewers are under age 21. Yet, teenagers frequently watch, programs that are broadcast after 9 p.m., i.e. late night television, which are supposedly aimed at adults. And of course, they also watch a lot of sporting events. And, sporting events, were certainly filled, with alcohol advertising. Like during the 1998 Super Bowl, a full 23 minutes of beer ads were shown. And so that's almost, a half-hour sitcom. There was almost, if you add that together, there was almost a half-hour, sitcom worth of beer ads shown at the 1998 Super Bowl. And according to an August 2002 report in Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Weekly, 77% of kids aged 22 to 18 view television shows after 9 o'clock p.m. Ads in these time slots are often, quite entertaining. 73% of a sample group of 750 teenagers remembered seeing alcohol ads, and most of them could even remember the brand names that were advertised. And so not only are they remembering, seeing alcohol ads, they remember the brand names as well. In December 2002, the Center on Alcohol Marketing and Youth, which is in short called CAMY, say C-A-M-Y, at a Georgetown University found that alcohol was advertised on 13 of the 15 shows most popular with the teen demographic or population group. In fact, the Center on Alcohol Marketing and Youth found that teenagers between 12 and 20 years old see more commercials for beer, malt drinks, and other alcoholic beverages than they do even for kid-oriented products such as chewing gum or snacks. And now I'm going to look here at the hidden message. Now, commercials for distilled spirits such as whiskey, gin, and vodka do not appear on American television, yet commercials for beer and wine do. And this creates a mistaken assumption that there's little risk involved in drinking beer or wine. In fact, all of these products are alcoholic beverages, therefore, they all have similar effects on the mind and the body. And the various pre-mixed beverages that appear on the market every now and then may cause the most confusion. Like, for example, in the 1980s, the alcohol industry began heavily marketing wine coolers, via TV commercials. Wine coolers, which were never that popular, and really not that popular now, but nonetheless, coolers are blends of wine and ingredients such as fruit juice that hide the taste of alcohol. They have a lower alcohol percentage than wine, such as a 6% with the wine coolers compared with more than 13% for most wines. However, the average cooler bottle, though, holds at least twice as much liquid as a wine glass. So the amount of alcohol in one serving is really about the same as wine. So in other words, coolers are alcoholic beverages in every sense of the word, although many, young people don't know that. For example, a 1996 survey of 70,000 kids in grades 4 to 6, we're talking about really young kids here, just in 4th to 6th grade, a survey that was conducted by the Texas Commission on Alcohol and Drug Abuse found that coolers were considered the least dangerous type of alcoholic beverage. So even, kids in grades 4 to 6, said that they thought coolers were the least dangerous type of alcoholic beverage. And once again, as we said, wine coolers represent a very small portion of the alcohol market, extremely small compared to beer. And beer commercials often use themes and images that kids, are going to find appealing, like the hip talking frogs, that were in the Budweiser commercials. I don't think they really have that anymore, but that was really big, like in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And like things like cute racing squirrels, those things there, were very appealing, to young people, very appealing to children. And they send mixed messages, about the promotion of beer. Then some commercials, that are going to more so like really appeal, like to teenagers, like teenage boys. They're going to show rugged-looking men and women, scaling mountain cliffs or racing bikes over the roughest terrain. See, these ads, send that hidden message that, drinking, makes a person strong and tough, very similar, like to the Marlboro Man, with Marlboro, like back in the, like the 80s to the early 90s. Then other commercials, use sex appeal, and of course, most teenagers, going to understand that drinking beer doesn't necessarily make boys seem, suddenly attractive, yet, the question is, do these clever ads appeal to a person's good sense or to one's emotion? Most of the time, that's what they're doing. They're appealing to emotion, just like, with the Marlboro Man. If you put a cigarette in your mouth, that's not going to make you really be more masculine. But, on the emotional side, that's what it's going to make people think, just like with alcohol. It's going to make me look more mature, masculine, and confident. See, in the placement of these alcohol commercials, are a big issue as well. Kids, they tend to be big fans of sports and music programs, and, that's where we find a lot of alcohol sponsors, like on sports. You can't watch, a pro sports game without seeing commercials for alcohol, no matter what sport that is. I've saw that on everything myself, from like the English Premier League, the soccer league in England, that they show on TV in America. All the way to the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL hockey, everything in between. See, advertisers build on kids' loyalty to their favorite stars and transfer that appeal to the product that they're advertising. If that's sports or, that's things like MTV, VH1 Music. And a 1994 study in the American Journal of Public Health reported an interesting connection between ads and what kids actually thought about drinking. The kids who were most aware of beer advertising were more likely to have favorable notions of drinking and to express their intention to drink. And the authors concluded that alcohol advertising may predispose young people to drinking. And it seems as that's, the case, as really it was, as well with the tobacco ads whenever tobacco was on television. And then it's not just television, it's also been college campuses. Of course, college campuses have one feature in common with popular TV shows, a mixed age group. Almost freshmen, sophomores, and even juniors are going to be underage, only going to be 18 to 20 years old. The typical college also enrolls, many graduate students, enough to make up a sizable market for advertisers, and of course those that are of age, the 21-year-old seniors. And this provides an in for advertisers and promoters who are legally entitled to advertise to the, people 21 years of age and older. And brewers and beer distributors were spending $20 million a year on marketing to colleges in the 1990s. Of course, much of that was sponsorship of sporting events. However, though, by 2001, the majority of colleges told an NCAA, National Collegiate Athletic Association survey, that they no longer accepted alcohol ads in sporting events. So, thankfully, some of these colleges, probably what happened more so, they got fed up with all the issues, of drinking, and so they just, they no longer wanted any alcohol ads at their sporting events. Then, of course, also the internet, the growth of the internet has provided, a big channel for alcohol marketing to reach anybody, especially young people. Now, in this day and age, with things like YouTube and so forth, brewers and distillers have put up, some of the most, exciting websites and, some of the most, some of the best advertising, like with video and sound effects, like with interactive games and product promotion, like we said, YouTube, and then also all the online games, as well. We have alcohol advertising there. So now this raises that question there, what should government do? And like we've already mentioned there about tobacco. Tobacco ads have already been, eliminated from television, radio, and just about everywhere. But the government, though, takes a much lower profile with alcohol advertising than it did with tobacco. And the reason for that, the government says, is because tobacco is harmful to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a kid or if you're a grown person, even if you use tobacco socially, which really nobody does, just about anybody who uses tobacco is going to be an addict, somebody that's going to use a lot of that every day. Whereas the government says alcohol, though, can be enjoyed by people that consume it safely in moderation. Like, whereas, though, even social drinking is really bad. It is really bad for the health. It's really bad for health, and even people that do only drink, on occasion, they can still have many, many issues with alcohol. And of course, some public interest groups have called on the government, to get involved. People that are part of the temperance movement, people that are advocating for children, that just don't want any, alcohol anywhere to be viewed by children, like on television and radio, just like with tobacco. That happened in 1996. Whenever the distilled spirits industry dropped its voluntary ban on TV and radio ads. The industry's Distilled Spirits Council claimed that current practices discriminated against their companies in favor of beer brewers and wine manufacturers. And their decision caused a public uproar. Hundreds of these public interest groups appealed to the Federal Communications Commission to intervene, and bills were proposed in Congress. And in the end, most broadcasters refused the ads, and the voluntary ban does remain in effect. And so then, by, these, like advocacy groups that are, anti-alcohol, we have the counterattack. And just like we mentioned there, and given the apparent success of anti-smoking ads, if you remember, like back in the 90s, or maybe even before that through the 80s, but especially I know the 90s, anti-smoking ads were, very successful, and, they did cause a lot of tobacco use to drop. And some of these, same activists are calling for, alcohol counter-advertising. They want to show ads that feature cool kids having fun without alcohol. According to a 2002 study by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, It says there is an increasing body of literature that suggests that alcohol counter-advertising is effective in reducing the alcohol consumption of teenagers and young adults. And so then, what is the alcohol industry's view of this? The alcohol industry consistently denies, to no surprise, that it targets the under 21 age group, claiming that it does not want to waste money appealing to people who cannot legally buy their products. In March 2003, a spokesperson for Discus said advertising whether someone is of age or not affects what they might choose to drink, not whether they drink. Some independent observers agree. In 1997, an article appeared in Priorities, a reputable journal that sometimes takes controversial stands on public health issues. The title of the article says, "Alcohol advertising does not promote underage drinking." And the author of this claims that the public fears that TV ads lead to teen alcohol abuse have not been backed up by research. He prefers to rely on the natural skepticism of young people as a defense against any hidden messages in the ads. He even speculates that advertising bans could backfire, since some kids seem to resent any attempt by grown-ups to tell them what to do. And so, with that being said, it's all up to the individual. The controversy over this alcoholic advertising, could continue to go on. We'll see. We'll see, what happens with this. But the bottom line is that, it's up to the individual. You make the decision, not what's on, the television screen. We have to make these decisions for ourselves. In what we do. Of course, I am anti-alcohol and would like, alcohol to be banned altogether. But, that decision is up to us. And people have to know what the truth is. They have to know what, they have to know scientifically that alcohol is bad for you and it's responsible, like in our last lecture, it's responsible for both a lot of health and social issues. And so that concludes the alcohol lecture that we have today. Next lecture, we're going to be looking at the history of alcohol, and so that'll be a bit longer than this one. This one actually went a little longer than I thought it would, but we'll be looking at the history of alcohol in our next lecture, and we look forward to that, and we'll see you then. Until the direction the shadows flee away, I am Dr. Cooper, and I love you, and I appreciate you.